here. Certainly you can put yourself on video mute, but we would much prefer that you are on video with us. Welcome everybody to this month's episode of Texas Leadership Network Mastermind Group. It is January 13th, 2022. As weird as that is to say, we did make it to 2022, and I'm really excited about the big group that we have on with us today. So for those of you not familiar with the mastermind group, it is about peer mentoring to help you meet your goals. It's about having an open, facilitated conversation. What we do here with TLN is we bring a topic to you. We talk about the topic, or we present the topic for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then we have an open discussion with the group. And it benefits you more if you come regularly, because you start to build that relationship with the group, and we can all hold each other accountable to the goals that we set or the actions that we take away from the mastermind. So group basics, nobody's comments or bad comments. This is a positive, supportive room. So please continue to support others, have a great attitude when you show up here, and hopefully you take something great away, whether it's something on the topic or even building a new relationship here. It's all about sharing skills, accountability, and networking. And these are all of the amazing, beautiful faces of the TLN network, which is a network of coaches across the state of Texas. I am super excited about our not only our topic today, but the gentleman who is presenting it. So Troy Weber, I'm going to turn it over to you. And today we're going to be talking about the life cycle of a business, which really ties into the conversations that we've been having over the past few months. Troy, it is all yours.
Thank you, Tricia. Appreciate it. Welcome, everyone. It's great to see some faces that keep recurring. We appreciate having you on board, and the new faces as well. Thank you for joining us today. I'll share my screen here. Tricia, let me know for sure that you guys can see it okay.
You're on.
Am I good? All right. Well, you know, it's 2022. And when Tricia said that, I thought, gosh, it's hard to believe it's January 13th, 2022 already. So I get this a lot with my clients. So today we're going to be talking about it's 2022. Which way should I go? And being an outdoorsman, I had to share the path of the outdoors here. And the question that we have to ask ourselves is, are we going to take the path heavily traveled or the one less traveled? That's a debate that we're going to talk about later today. But the fun thing that I'm going to share with you, and now I'm going to date myself, are you using Waze and Google Maps and all those things? Or when your car, or maybe you're out of your car and your battery dies on your phone. All right, old school road atlas. Hey, I'm from the old school. I used to have a stack of those. I see some hands raised. Good, I'm not alone. I appreciate that. You know, it's always good to have a backup plan, right? A business continuity plan. We like to call it that as well. But I thought I would have some fun with this, because today, as we talk about the business life cycle, it literally is a map of your business, of your career, of your personal relationships, careers, empires, and I mean, history of various nations all go through these natural cycles. So I want you to think about that, both personally and professionally, as we look at this map called the business life cycle. Some people call it the sigmoid curve, and it's taken from Charles Handy's book called The Empty Raincoat. So if you want to know more, that's where the source of this information comes from. Basically, there's three phases of the business life cycle. We're going to talk through those a little bit and understand what each one are made of and some of the challenges and opportunities in each of those phases, right? So think about this: learning, growth, and decline or reinvention. Okay. So this is what the sigmoid curve looks like. And I'm going to explain this in more detail. In the learning phase, there are opportunities and challenges in there, as I mentioned earlier. This one, the very first one that comes up, is the honeymoon trap. I like that one because everybody's excited. You're starting a brand new business. Maybe you're starting a new area in your career, or maybe you're launching a new product or service line in your company. Whatever the case is, you're in that learning curve, but you're excited. I mean, there's nothing can go wrong at this point. You are rocking and rolling. The trap says you got to be a little careful because you're not anticipating things that could throw a wrench in things. You're so overly excited, you're just blowing and going. Next one is 3 feet from gold. So what you see is a climax, things are really moving well, and then you see the decline. And there's a great story, and I'll share with you the book. I won't steal all the thunder because it's a great story, taken from Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. That's where the story is really played out. So I'll give you the synopsis or the Cliff Note version of it. The 3 feet from gold, there was a gentleman in the Northeast that literally went west to seek his adventure of harvesting this gold, right? Took his pickaxe and ended up in Colorado. And guess what? He found some, covered his tracks and said, man, I got to go get some equipment. I need to exploit this vein of gold that I found. Went back, gathered the funding that he needed back from friends, family, what have you, came back and I mean, launched the exercise. And man, did he hit it. It was incredible. They had a couple of train car loads of gold. They had it checked. It was some of the best ever. He was so pumped. Man, things were going great, looking good. He was in that honeymoon trap, and then he got to that 3 feet from gold. And the next thing you know, the vein dried up. Meanwhile, he's got equipment, he's got people, he's got a lot of funding involved, right? Friends and family helping him fund it, by the way, adds a little more pressure to it. And he literally ends up having to sell it. Can't find any more gold. And again, I'm not going to steal the whole thunder of the story. You got to go check it out in Napoleon Hill's book. But basically, the short version of it is he sold all the equipment and everything, pennies on the dollar, to a junk man. Well, the junk man was smarter than the average junk man. He went out and sought advice from a mining engineer and said, I don't know anything about gold and how all this works. Guess what? The mining engineer said, man, they didn't study the fault lines. They didn't study the details. 3 feet from where they stopped digging is a major gold mine. He made millions and millions. The moral of that story is don't stop when things get tough. Don't throw in the towel too early just because you've hit a decline in that learning phase. Get another gear and take it into the growth mode, okay? Now we move into things are really up and to the right. Things, I mean, nothing can go wrong. I mean, sales are crazy. Clients are coming on board. Products and services are being sold right and left. And at this point, this is where people, processes, and systems become an issue, right? It's like, well, we've always done it that way. I'm good. You know, it's all right. Things are exploding and expanding and scaling so quickly, those processes can't keep up. That can be a founder's trap that holds your business back or your activity or your career from really scaling, right? So we need to be cognizant of that in the growth phase. As we continue, there's a success trap. This one is, oh my gosh, it's up and to the right to the peak. I mean, we are really rolling now. This one you can get in trouble because you start losing focus of your strategy of your company. You start saying, well, everything I touch turns to gold. So let's just try these other things. They may not be your forte. They may not be your core strength. You deviate from that strategy that you'd put in place. And guess what? You start getting diluted, right? What's the old adage? Dilution is not the solution to pollution. You're chasing too many animals. You're too diluted, therefore not making an impact, right? Let me give you a case in point here. Has anyone besides me ever used BlackBerry? I used BlackBerry literally good. I'm not alone. Thank you guys for raising your hand. I used BlackBerry all over the world and absolutely loved it. Worked like a champ everywhere I went. It was just the cream de la cream. But just like BlackBerry, they were at this success trap, lost the strategic focus, didn't look over their shoulder and recognize the competitors. You heard of a little company called Apple and Samsung that were coming. They were coming their way. And needless to say, you know what happened to BlackBerry? In fact, just a couple of weeks ago, we heard, right? they're shutting up the office. I mean, they're shutting down. Broke my heart because they had the best opportunity and lost it, right? That's what the success trap is all about. Now, here's the key. That success trap, once you overcome that piece, the question is, are you in denial at the point of, well, you know what? It's someone else's fault. It's the economy. It's COVID. It's this, whatever the case is. Are you denying the fact that decisions you made are causing a decline? And are you to get another gear and regroup and reinvent? We talked about Apple. We talked about Samsung. Do you realize they didn't start in the telephone business? But look at where they are today. They reinvented themselves, created a phenomenal product that is world market share today. Why? They reinvented. They didn't get stuck in that success trap. They were hungry. They were moving, sticking with their strategy, paying attention to competition, and took over the market share. That's the decline or reinvention. It's a mindset, right? What do we do different in each of these areas? And the interesting thing about this is, even if you're running a very successful business, maybe you're launching a new product or service may take you right back to the learning curve again for that aspect or for that product. And the same thing with growth and decline and reinvention. So I want us to be cognizant of this business life cycle, this map of our business or of our career, personally and professionally. Where are we on this journey? And what path are you going to take in 2022 to eliminate the traps and the downfalls and get another gear and reinvent and be a success in 2022? So before we open up the floor, I just want to share with you something. I'm listening to Zig Ziglar again. I love Zig. I'm listening to Over the Top, and he talks about 3 words that I'm going to leave you with for 2022. He said, plan for success. That's a strategic planning. Put it down on paper, right? Prepare. I take that back to the learning curve. Reinvent, retool, whatever you need to be successful. And then last but not least, expect success and make it happen in 2022. So I'll leave you with that thought. Now let's open it up for some fun discussion. I know there's people out there, y'all are grinning. I saw you grinning. So I know you understand what I'm talking about and can share a story about maybe where you were or where you are today. Either one is open. So I'll open it up for questions, comments. Dennis, I know you've got one.
There's that awkward pause. So maybe it'll stoke a little bit more conversation too. So I don't know, has anyone heard of Amazon before? Amazon? Anyone ever wonder why and how they just continue to grow and grow and grow and grow and grow and exploit other markets? I don't, if you've ever been to, they call it reInvent. So every year Amazon has a conference. It's not really a conference. They pretty much shut down and take over Las Vegas for like a week, and it's called reInvent. And it is just an amplified version, really, on a massive scale, Troy, of what you talked about toward the end there. Amazon thoughtfully goes through every single product and every single product line and questions, should we continue? If so, why? And it's cool to be, I love going to that conference. I went year after year after year after year until they shut it down for COVID. And they had it last year, but it was a little bit watered down. But that process, that reinvention process, it doesn't matter, right? They avoid that trap. I said, yeah, we're really profitable. And this is an amazing product or an amazing product line, but what's its future? And, Andy Jassy and Jeff Bezos, it was cool. You could actually, they would get up on stage every year. And it was like, and today we're announcing, and they'd make, you'd look at that. Why are you changing it? It's perfect. It sounds great. But they would reinvent every single year. And I think that's, it takes a lot of work. But boy, you look at a company like Amazon, and if they can go through their entire portfolio and look at each one at that level, I mean, that's how companies like that stay way, their heads way above water and are able to reinvest and go and spend time, in 3 feet from gold. I'm not going to stop digging yet. This looks like it's moving. but they'll make those adjustments. And even when they're 3 feet from goal, they'll reinvent an emerging product line. So I love going there, and it fits right into what you talked about.
Thank you, Dennis. You're exactly right. So some of these sound familiar. I saw several of you nodding, so you know what I'm talking about. I'll just share a personal story along that line, is that I think back in my corporate career, spending 31 years in a corporate career, every 8 or 10 years, I radically changed my entire career. And my wife would say, why are you doing that? I mean, you're really doing well in what you're doing. Why is it? I love that learning curve. I like that constant learning, so even within my own career, I would force this change back into the learning mode where the learning curve was steeper, so I could learn and grow in a different environment, a different group, or a different part of the company. So this can be career related. This can be very personal related, as well as your company. So those are just food for thought, some personal examples. As I go through this every time, I always think, man, I've been through this, I don't know how many times, and I'm still going through it, because there's not a set frequency that you go through this. Again, you launch a new product line, it can take you right back to the learning curve. Not a bad thing, just understand what's in that phase of the life cycle and avoid the traps that can trip you up. Questions, comments about any of these make sense? Personal? Miguel, it looked like you were nodding your head. Tell us an example of what you've dealt with.
Yeah, and for example, here in the area, there's a lot of manufacturing, and I have a friend who managed a large manufacturing German company across the border. And sometimes they're so busy, when you go over the chart, sometimes the question they ask is where we are, what do we need to do? And what the example from Amazon, they use a ton of data analytics to look at, track of the numbers, to make those decisions. But in the production line, some people, they have issues with engineers and quality. And for them to translate to the chart where they are, if they're close to a point when they're producing X number of items with very good quality, they know those things, but it's sometimes what I hear from them is where we are now. Sometimes depending on the background, is difficult, but they need to be doing that, reinventing and changing production lines. Everything is going to be changing. If not, they're going to be in the past very soon. Everything changes fast, very fast, especially in manufacturing.
That's an excellent example. Appreciate that, Miguel. You're exactly right. You got to be, adapting to the change, right, in order to keep up with it, and understand where you are and not get caught up in these, so you can continue to grow. Greg, I saw that you were off mute there. Did you have a comment?
Miguel said it exactly. I came from a manufacturing background, and we had to change processes. We had new product lines. We had changed processes, and change the way that we did business. And when you grow, that particular company grew from a $50 million to $150 million company almost overnight, and we had to change everything: new facility, new processes, everything. And it was a struggle.
I bet. So it puts you back into that learning curve all over again, Greg, sounds like.
It did, for everybody.
Yeah, and that's huge. What you said is, it changed, literally the whole landscape of the company, of how you did things. So processes, everything were impacted, I would assume. Wow. But it worked. And you went all the way through and didn't fall prey to the 3 feet from goal if you grew that quickly, right?
Well, the oil and gas market kind of dropped out that time and kind of stopped offshore drilling.
True. It is true. Oh, that's great. Other thoughts, comments? Jesse?
Yeah, so on topic, I love what you're saying about it's about assessing or pivoting or being flexible. We live in a multi-level fluctuating world, even more than now. And you constantly have to, for ourselves in-house, we assess bi-weekly, quarterly, and yearly, and that's constantly ongoing. Obviously that changes, but what Dennis was saying about, companies like Amazon and others that look at what's working and how to set, a lot of times what happens is they don't drill down enough. They may assess, but they don't understand their own product. They don't drill down far enough. And I know this firsthand. even from Amazon. I've had conversations that companies like that miss the mark because they don't understand the market space or what they're trying to do. Yes, they know that it needs to be invented or built into it, but they don't drill down that extra step to understand. And they're running a product and missing typically 2-3 key things. For example, a couple months ago, they didn't realize that they were losing on average, about 10 million new customers a month. That's staggering.
Yeah. Wow.
And so you can have all the data, you can have all the analytics, you can have all these conferences, but if you can't figure that out from your own small teams, then there's a problem.
It's a great point, Jesse. And if you think about, if I hear you correctly, they're in this growth phase and maybe missing some opportunity, right?
Oh, correct. And this is not picking on Amazon. This is in multiple layers of companies. Typically it is in the larger, because they are just scrambling and throwing and growing and just going with the flow. And then it's the old model. We put it in place and then fix it as it breaks, even though it kind of times costs more, or you get regulated or fined because of implementation. So, yeah.
No, that's a great point. And coming from big corporate world and working with corporate giants all over the globe, I guarantee you what you just said is prevalent around the globe.
But you can take that same analogy, and it really does also work for a small mom and pop business. It's the same thing.
Yep.
Our entrepreneurs, we have tons of people jumping in and testing the waters of new things. COVID ripped the Band-Aid off, right? No one knew what Zoom was. I imagine most of you knew what Teams and Zoom and other things, but a lot of people didn't. And I connect with folks that are using new tools or software and don't understand the product they buy and are constantly looking for help or direction to say, how do I do this or how do I get that?
Yeah.
And they're missing the mark. And a lot of times it's just a shame because it's not always a major expensive fix. It's just a simple little understanding or something, or taking that next level. I was amazed. Literally last night I was in a group like this and a topic came up about just password management. Not picking on anyone that doesn't do that or use it. And there's all different layers and ways to do it. But this gentleman doesn't. He has a company that collects people's data and uses that for their business and says he uses 5 of the same passwords. So I said to him, I said, I'm a vendor coming to you and I'm going to ask you, how do you protect my product or my infrastructure or just my data or just my info? And you tell me you use 5 passwords. I'm closing the door on you day one.
Yeah.
And it really hit home with him.
Yeah.
He never thought about implementing something just as simple as a spreadsheet with more than 5 passwords.
Yeah, exactly.
And I know that sounds horrible or that it doesn't understand it, but I'm sure we all fall in that with our clients or people that still use password 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yep, exactly. And that you brought up a great point there, Jesse, is that if I think about the business life cycle, great perspective you brought is that COVID, that's a good example. It changed the world, literally, right? So what did it really do in essence in terms of the business life cycle? It put us all back in the learning curve at some level, right? Whether it be the tools like Zoom, things like that, right? But it forced more people to get out of their comfort zone and either learn or guess what? Get left behind. It's a great point.
Absolutely. 5 years ago, I was building lightweight digital business cards because I said, this is just engagement, doing something different and QR codes. And I got deer in the headlights.
Exactly.
And pushback. And now how many people have either seen a QR code, understands a QR code, or has a digital business card?
Oh yeah. And how many restaurants do you go in that's the only way you get to the menu?
Right. Yeah. So, we're lemonade makers. We love lemons. Give us lemons and we'll make lemonade. And it helped people. And I think in some ways you want to be positive with COVID, is it helped businesses move to that next level and start thinking at least a little bit different or engaging things that would have taken years, if not never, to get there.
You're exactly right. Yeah. It's forced a lot of efficiency and a lot of different thinking, like you said, and think about a lot of storefronts shut down and a lot have gone e-commerce, right? I got to give them credit. Look at Chick-fil-A. That's a great example. I don't know about you guys, but Chick-fil-A, I mean, all in the issue, you couldn't go inside, whatever. They populated people outside to move 2 or 3 or more lines of traffic. Amazing. So again, do you shut down? Oh, no one can go on inside and order food. No, they adapted, put the staff outside with iPads and various things to take your money and your order and everything. Brilliant. Again, going back to Jesse's point, they made lemonade out of the lemons. They didn't say, oh, woe is me. They reinvented on the fly because they had to, and they're remarkable at it. I love it. I love that story. Every time I go to the Chick-fil-A, I grin and say, oh my gosh, that's amazing adaptation. And they're prospering, and they didn't upset any customers because guess what? They're still moving the lines. Right? Wow. I love that mindset. Again, you got to be forced out of your comfort zone. Sometimes we don't like it, but I don't know about you, but you grow more when you're uncomfortable. We don't like to say it that way. That's the truth. I know there's some other thoughts over here. Mark, I see you smiling.
Well, hey, Troy, nice job. I just came out of training not long ago, and I've done that power principle a few times, and I've never touched anywhere close to how good you were. So you showed me what it's really supposed to be done. Thank you. But also, I would say coming out of the financial services industry, which is an industry under rampant attack from so many places, technology, discounts, information. I lived that change, and I lived it, and I saw the effects on people. And I will say this, that employees, customers, etc., it has to be a cultural thing. The concept of change, and leadership and people need to understand how to roll out change. And there needs to be an education, and not just something that comes down from a McKinsey consultant. Because, that's the easy part. The hard part is getting your troops to understand the why. And if you can deliver the why, that's the part that, in my mind, many companies that I was around sometimes failed at. But yeah, if you're not willing to change, you're out of business. I saw a stat, and you're going to give me a little leeway on this stat, you guys. Okay. It's kind of true, kind of, but you can use it. Something to the effect that somewhere around 65% of all jobs that I think high school graduates are going to have 10 years from now will be completely new industries. Think about that.
That's huge.
Now, is that not reason to understand the cycle of change, by itself? So, I think it's a powerful concept, and one that, since I've seen it done professionally, I'll use more.
I don't know about professional, but glare off my forehead, that's fine.
You and me both, man. I got this thing. I don't know what is going on.
But
Like a light bulb.
I love what you said, Mark, because if you think about what you said in terms of communicating the change, so if you go back to that business life cycle, it's not only the learning curve, but those people, processes, and systems breaking down. Because maybe you did it this way before COVID, and now you need more communication. In fact, I was just talking to a business owner yesterday evening, and he was saying, Troy, this remote stuff is killing us, and he's an executive in this big corporation. And he said, man, you can't go around the water cooler anymore and talk to somebody and get that dialogue going. So what does that really say? In that growth area, both learning and growth phase, there has to be a lot of adaptation. Or guess what? What you used before, not working today. You got to think differently. How do you manage teams when they're all remote? And this happens to be a research type facility on top of that. So you got all these experts, Are you leaving us, Steve?
I'm going to drop a little comment on you since I'm old enough to know all these things.
Love it.
I was in a retail franchise, but we were 100% in malls at one point. I used to go to the annual retail symposium meeting, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And in 1996, I was at this meeting, and you never know who you're going to be sitting with at lunch. It's just all set up. You have a name tag, but it's all done at random. Well, I'm sitting next to the senior VP of Chick-fil-A. And what we're talking about is that they are going to, he thinks everybody's lost their mind, but the company has decided to open locations outside of malls because up to now they had been 100% in malls. And I saw the fellow the next year at the 97 or 98 one. And so I purposely went up to him and said, hey, it's been a year. How's it going? He said, you won't believe how it's going. Our non-mall locations are doing 3 times the volume of the mall stores in their first year. I mean, the mall sucks compared to this business format. We should have been doing this 20 years ago. I was wrong. I was dead wrong. 3 times the volume and less, and they're, owning their real estate instead of having a very expensive mall lease. So that's just one example of that.
I love
And
that.
somebody at Chick-fil-A made a decision in 96, we're going to rock the boat and do something totally different.
Wow.
Non-mall location for the first time. And had they not, you wouldn't have had any multiple drive-throughs or 4 or 5 nice young people to take your order, which happens to me too, Troy.
That is awesome. Thank you for sharing, Steve. You think about that. That's a perfect example of reinvention again.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, they were doing well, right? They were definitely in the growth
off the
phase.
charts anyway. They were already, somebody would have thought most people would have thought that this company is as successful as they could possibly be.
Exactly.
Give them a tip of the hat, couldn't do it better. And they changed and took it up a number of notches.
Wow, that is amazing.
But I want to echo what Mark said, Troy. I really enjoyed your presentation. You did a great job of delivering and presenting that sigmoid curve.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
Appreciate
and
that.
I don't know if you guys see what's going on in the chat, but Jesse had earlier mentioned, BlackBerry thinking being, they call it the mall theory, right? And we see, I don't know about you guys, but you drive anywhere near a mall and they're empty, huge buildings. There may be 1 or 2 stores left. So, thinking about the franchise owners or the owners of those types of stores, where are they stuck, right, in this sigmoid curve, and who are they reaching out to, and where do they think their business is going to go if they don't shift, right?
That's a great point. Thank you for sharing that, Jesse and Tricia. Appreciate that. Another thought is, how do you know where you are relative to 3 feet from goal? When do you know you should stop digging and maybe dig in a different direction? What indicators do you guys see when you're perhaps moving in that 3 feet from goal region? When do you know that? How do you know that? What signs are evident?
Isn't that always the $1 million question?
Yeah.
That's always the tough thing. I mean, we all watch, I'm sure we've all watched, drawing a blank, the gold mining show, Gold Rush. We all have watched it, right? And they pay $20,000 a day to either test drill or they dig and spend millions of dollars to find it. And it literally could be 1 inch to the left or 1 inch to the right is millions of dollars, or you fail. It's always, yeah.
Exactly. So how long do you push that envelope digging in that existing hole before you switch? Right? Because we know we don't want to give up. Forget that. I mean, hey, we're going to lose the opportunity. The question is redirect, right? How long do you go there? What are those indicators that you see? Sometimes it's time value of money, right? Go ahead, Dennis.
I was going to say, I think one of the keys though is that a lot of times when we're digging, right, we enclose ourselves to either ourselves or we look for input from those people who are digging the hole with us, and we don't seek input from the outside, right? And I'm working with a group of clients, and we're talking about the different decision-making processes, right? Is it command? Is it collaborative? Is it consensus? And, sometimes that collaborative, bringing other people in to get an alternative point of view and different ways of looking at things, and people who aren't even in your industry, opening the kimono and saying, hey, here's where I'm at. And I think I should just cut bait. I should stop digging. and I'm going to pick a different shovel. I'm going to pick a different hole and go somewhere else. What do you think about this? And just getting that input. I mean, that's what groups like this are powerful for, but there are networking groups, there are other social type groups and business type groups that you can just collaborate with. And I'm always amazed how many people are absolutely willing to give their time and offer perspective and give a different point of view. So I'd say the starting point, Jesse, you said it right. That's the magic question. Do you keep going or not? But I think it starts with engagement of people who ultimately sometimes don't have a vested interest in striking gold. They have no skin in the game and finding that next nugget, right? But they can look at to use the gold rush analogy in that TV show, they can look at your equipment, they can look at the field, they can look at the location with an unbiased eye and say, can you tell me why it's sitting there? And the guy that's been running the equipment says, gosh, I'm not sure. Maybe we should change it, right? So I think that alternate perspective is key to figuring out, do I change shovels and dig somewhere else, or should I just keep going?
Yeah. Hey, Troy and Dennis, that's exactly what I would share if I were to advise people on how to manage particular assets in the securities industry. It's you have to take the emotion out of it, and usually that's by utilizing a third party who looks at things in that light of the facts and the surroundings and the evidence, and then makes the decision. Because once you've vested whatever the number of dollars, time and sweat equity in something, and you're emotional about it, that decision is likely going to be wrong.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. Brian, you were off mute. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, no, I was just, I appreciate, joining today. I work with a company that provides HR, outsourcing services, a PEO, but just, just what you shared with the sigmoid curve and going through it and stuff like that, I can see that in regards to the whole sales cycle in regards to trying to reinvent yourself, where you kind of you're in that learning phase, you're learning, you're excited and stuff like that. You kind of make your first sale, things may mellow out, and you start to, go back up that ladder, and then, things are always up and down and stuff like that. And there's times, especially with this COVID environment that we live in today, that, you have to figure out, reinventing yourself in regards to going about it in a different way and kind of adapting, like we've all adapted. But beyond that, they go back to when you're all talking about this mall theory and stuff like that, because, I hate to say it, but I'm somewhat of a weekend mall rat down here where I live in the Clear Lake area. And, just to kind of see what the evolution of how things have changed with COVID and the stores coming and going at this new mall up here, or Baybrook Mall, where they kind of built this whole new outdoor area that's real nice and stuff like that. And just what's happened with just the downturn in business and the type of businesses they're trying to bring in to try to survive, and how to look at what the mall, the management companies are doing there to continue to survive, how they kind of keep trying to change their direction to, stay afloat before, the banks pull the plug on them and shut it down. But like we all heard about the Gap, situation here about, when it all started, how all these stores were closed because they weren't paying their rent. Well, it's our local Gap now is, basically shutting down. And apparently now they're changing again to kind of go through more of a consolidation phase throughout the country to shrink their footprint, in order to survive.
Exactly. No, that's a great perspective. And yeah, unfortunately, a truth right in front of us, we get to see all the time, right? Yeah, I can relate to that. And Patrick, I saw that you were off mute as well. Do you want to share?
Yeah, thank you. So a personal experience with the 3 feet from gold back in 2014, myself and 2 other men, 2 like-minded men, bought into a drywall company. Not because there was a big passion for hanging drywall, but for running a company where we could give back to community and kingdom. And, it started slow. We had too much overhead. 2 partners bailed at the 3 feet from gold, and I persevered. And we were a $2 million a year revenue company when we bought it. went to 4.5, then 6.5. And so I went through this, ultimately the success trap, and took my eye off the ball a little bit, and completely trusted the chief operating officer who knows the business of hanging and texturing drywall in residential homes. We're just coming out of, I am out of a denial trap, because prices just went through the roof, as you all know, and we were behind the curve in terms of increasing our prices. So I've addressed that. I've had to address that over the last 30 days, just as we were working through certification. But this is a picture of 2014 to 2022 for me in another business that I own.
Wow. So that's very personal for you, Patrick. You've lived it. You can tell stories about every single one of them, it sounds like.
Yeah. And there are so many things, and none of these are a point in time, obviously, as it kind of shows on the curve, but there's a period of time when you're stuck or enjoying success. And so, yeah, I've got some personal stories around that.
I appreciate
I think one of the important things here, Troy, too, is to be aware of where you are, right? It's not just second guessing what you're doing, right? It's looking at that curve and saying, okay, well, I feel a certain way, or I see a certain thing. Where am I on this curve, and what do I need to do next?
I love that. You're exactly right. And, speaking of that, I'm going to switch gears here for a second and share one more slide with you before we leave, just because of Tricia just promoted that idea. So I'm going to share it. Can you see my screen okay?
Yep.
Okay. So the law of self-control, one thing I quickly want to share with you, and this is really, really important when it comes to mindset. And I would argue that it's in all three phases, but definitely in the reinvention phase as well as the learning phase. And this is the West Buttress of Denali. I like this picture because I'm an outdoorsman, so I kind of like this. But this is taking you literally from 10,200 feet to the summit at 20,000. What does it require? Well, first and foremost, it requires thoughts, that self-talk, right? As you're going through this journey, and Patrick shared some personal examples of that a minute ago in his business, is that it starts with, what are you telling yourself when no one else is watching or listening? What does that self-talk look like? Those thoughts lead to feelings, and those feelings are what actions are, how do you feel about what's going on around you, to you, by you? It's how is those thoughts and that self-talk driving how you feel? And that leads to obviously the actions you're going to take, what you believe, what those thoughts are telling you, what those feelings are driving, what actions are you going to take as a result of that? And last but not least, that success, you're rewarded for, guess what? Those thoughts, not the feelings or the actions, but the thoughts. It all begins with the thoughts. So I want us to think about that. It's a mindset, especially in the learning curve, and then also in obviously all of them, but the learning curve specifically, especially in that 3 feet from gold area. What does your self-talk look like, and how is that leading to your success and being rewarded for what that looks like? So don't lose sight of that either as we think through going through this business life cycle. I love what Tricia said, and the whole idea behind me starting this presentation was literally around that roadmap. This is a map. And I love what Tricia said, identify where you are, be observant of the propensity to fall into one of these traps and avoid them, right? And reinvent and adapt, like we've been talking about, especially in this crazy new world of environment we're in through COVID and what have you. So again, as we talk through this, I just wanted to share that with you because it's so important, that mindset. And Patrick shared a lot about that a minute ago. Once you know where you are on this map, how do you pivot? How do you adapt? How do you get it, retool? I think Jesse mentioned that earlier. Retool, adapt, and how do you get prepared for the new reality, right? If it's e-commerce, so be it. If it's Chick-fil-A, okay, you can't go inside. So what? Put people outside and keep the flow moving. That is brilliant simple, but they recognized where they were and what the issues were. They adapted, pivoted, and went forward. So it's really exciting. I love your thoughts and your inputs, and you can tell it's very personal, right? We can all relate to either all of it, like Patrick shared, parts of it, or in my case, I think I've been through it a few times, you know, so, different parts of your life, your career, what have you. So it's exciting, but what's more exciting to me is to, like Tricia said, to be aware of the map and be aware of the challenges as well as the opportunities to overcome them so that you can move to the next phase. Last minute thoughts, comments? Law of self-control makes sense?
Yeah, great, man.
Yeah, I love that. Any last thoughts, Tricia?
Well, we do have a few new faces on the call today that didn't get to introduce themselves. So I would, Troy, if it's okay with you and okay with the group, I'd just like to do a quick once around, introduce yourself, tell us where you are in the world, and what was an insight for you today? What was an insight for you today? So Greg, would you start us off?
Greg Alt with Paramount Services in Houston. And one of the things that you reminded me of with this was you got to have the thoughts behind all of it. And if you don't think about it and aren't positive about those thoughts, you're not going to be able to get it done.
Excellent.
And that was just a good reinforcer for that.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Greg. Miguel, how about you? Would you introduce yourself, sir, and tell us one insight for today?
Yes, hi, this is Miguel Marquez. I'm from El Paso, Texas. I'm just barely brand new. I'm younger than a sophomore, probably. I come from a very heavy, hard work environment. It was hard with training, but my insight is talking to you guys is very, very positive. A lot of good things. It was the classes were difficult for me because I was working. I'm not working anymore, but it just is very insightful and you guys give me a lot of confidence. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Miguel. Jesse, how about you? Would you introduce yourself and tell us one insight from today?
Sure. So my name is Jesse. I'm based out of the Philadelphia area. Insight. Love what Troy said. I live and bleed that, but we run parallel, and it was nice to hear it just in a different way, because we all hear and speak different languages, and sometimes people understand analogy like that, or sometimes it's the plain English, like the mall theory. It just speaks to people where they understand it. So it's always great to hear a different way to approach it or to speak it so that your audience may grasp it.
Awesome. Thank you. We're so glad that you came back to visit with us today, Jesse. Mark Rhodes, would you please introduce yourself and give us an insight?
Oh, sure. Thanks, Trish. I'm in Dallas. I'm a relatively new coach. Trish has been teaching us every week. It's been great. And insights, just, after coming out of training, we have all these, I'll use a term that we don't use with clients, power principles. But I'll use them with you all, right? And it's just nice to see one actually come to life and people share, personal experiences and other things. Just gives me confidence that I can use that almost across the board with everybody in every way. Now, I was just thinking of it as a business, but in reality, it's career, it's everything. So thank you.
Absolutely. Troy, when you were presenting that, as we had a longer conversation around the life cycle of a business or business life cycle, I was even thinking it applies to health. So many people are focused on that right now. And this absolutely applies to what we go through when we're trying to get healthy again, right?
That's a great point. Love that. Thank you, Tricia.
Yeah. Brian Rothermel, would you please introduce yourself, sir, and give us an insight?
We come off mute there. Yeah, my name is Brian Rothermel. I'm here in the Houston area, Clear Lake specifically. Company I'm with today is called Unique HR. And again, like I mentioned, we do HR outsourcing services, but some of the insight learning today about that, the whole business life cycle, how you kind of went through it in the sigmoid curve and kind of seeing how it, can actually, impact you in an individual life, whether it's your personal or business life in regards to how you're going to always, be that close to, like you said, hitting gold, and then you finally might hit gold and take off on a trajectory, but then the directions may change real quick on you if you're not looking ahead to, adapt quickly and adjust, but you always have to kind of be ready for a bump in the road. But thanks, Troy, for kind of going through that. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
So thanks for visiting with us today, Brian. Pat, how about you? Would you introduce yourself, sir?
Pat Fan, live in North Texas, as far away from Dennis and Tricia as you could possibly be and still be in the same state. Maybe Miguel, you're pretty far away too. Most of my career has been in the healthcare industry and health insurance in particular. My takeaway would be the timing is always perfect. Going through 1 a.m. with the business that I'm running to reflect back to, because of purpose and passion, persevered through that 3 feet from gold. And I think that will allow me to, share that and the value of that to my clients.
Awesome. Thank you, Pat. Dennis, how about you?
Dennis Stetzel, and I'm on Clear Lake right now. Near NASA, in case anybody's familiar with that. I think the takeaway for me, we talk about this type of stuff a lot in the context of business, but I was reminded this applies to personal life as well. Okay? So take an inventory, like what are the personal things that I'm working on? I tend to get so buried in, business, clients, growth, and don't often take the time to pause and say, where am I from a personal perspective? And so that for me, that's the big takeaway. And I appreciate everybody's input and just hearing, everybody else's perspective to kind of wake me back up. There's a person behind the logos that I carry with me. So thank you all.
Yeah, absolutely. Troy, I know what your insights are. Do you have any parting words for us? So I think everybody here knows me, but if you don't, Tricia Stetzel, we live in a very tiny town called Sargent. There are 500 full-time residents here. We do not have a stoplight in our town, but we do have a Dollar General.
There you go.
And my insight is very much on the health path, right? Which is why I brought that up. And then Dennis mentioned it. So you can probably tell where we're at, right? In the life cycle of our relationship, right? Together, we hired a health coach last summer, and we're going through the program again this January through March, and pretty excited about it. So the insight there, or from you, is really this applies to so many other things besides just a business.
I love that. I really appreciate that. Thank you all for sharing. Thank you, Tricia. I really appreciate the camaraderie and the collaboration among this team is always so fruitful because we come from different backgrounds, different experiences, and to share that you see so much commonality. But again, as we leave, I know we got a couple minutes, but I wanted to leave you with those 3 words that Zig reminded me of. So plan for 2022, adapt, do whatever you need to do, prepare, retool if you need to, right? And expect success and results as a result of that planning and preparation. Make it happen in 2022. Thank you all for joining us today. Appreciate you all.
You're amazing, Troy. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye, everybody. Have a great
Thank you all.
afternoon.
Have a
Bye.
great week.
All right.
Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Thanks.